So China already controls 2 of Panama's 5 main canal zone ports. Did you know that?
Something big is unfolding just south of the US, and barely anyone's paying attention. In the aftermath of the Panama Canal's worst drought in history,
the Panama Canal is dealing with its worst drought on record, forcing its administration to reduce the number of ships allowed to cross on a daily basis.
China may be backing a bold alternative, a rumored 125-mile trench connecting a Central American lake to the Pacific Ocean. If true, it could upend global trade routes, bypass the canal, and reshape international power. What does it mean for U.S. influence?
China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
And why is no one stopping it? Let's unpack the secrets behind this silent, high-stakes power move.
The Chinese are up to with this new infrastructure project of theirs, because at a time of war, they could make the canal totally useless.
The Panama Canal's reign.
This is the story of the Panama Canal.
For over a century, the Panama Canal has been more than just a waterway. It's been a global trade lifeline, quietly powering the movement of billions in goods across the planet. Opened in 1914, this 51-mile canal, carved through Central America, transformed how the world ships everything from oil to iPhones. By bridging the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, it cut out the brutal 8,000-mile detour around Cape Horn, the infamous southern tip of South America, known more for its shipwrecks than smooth sailing. Instead of spending weeks at sea battling storms and delays, vessels could now sail through the canal in a matter of hours. Today, around 14,000 ships pass through the canal each year. That's nearly 40 ships a day, moving roughly 5% of all global maritime trade. And if you're in the US, chances are something in your house, your TV, your phone, even the food in your pantry, hitched a ride through it. In fact, 40% of US container trade relies on this single channel. What makes this engineering marvel tick is its iconic lock system.
French saw an opportunity to take that engineering know-how, apply it to Panama, and gain a kind of regional influence and power.
These massive chambers lift ships 85 feet above sea level into the heart of the isthmus, where they float across Gatun Lake,
which can raise and lower ships to 85 feet above sea level. They'll sail between the locks using the largest man-made lake in the world.
A man-made reservoir, before being lowered back down on the other side. It's like a giant water elevator for ships, powered by gravity and 52 million gallons of fresh water for each transit. And that's where things start to get shaky. All of that water comes straight from Gatun Lake. And for decades, nobody questioned this setup. It worked. But the whole system hinges on one fragile variable: rainfall. If the lake drops, the canal slows. If it dries too much, everything stops. That vulnerability remained in the background until 2024. That year, water levels hit a record low, and the canal's smooth, uninterrupted flow suddenly sputtered. Ships waited. Delays piled up. Costs skyrocketed. And for the first time, the world looked at this untouchable giant and saw a weakness that didn't go unnoticed. Because while the world was scrambling to adjust, one country had already been working on something massive, something bold, and it was about to challenge Panama's throne. The 2024 drought disaster. It took just one season to shake a century-old system to its core. In 2024, the Panama Canal faced its biggest crisis since it first opened. A relentless drought, supercharged by a powerful El Niño, scorched Central America and pushed water levels in Gatun Lake, the canal's beating heart, to record lows. For a waterway that depends on 52 million gallons of fresh water to lift each passing ship, this was more than a weather problem. It was a full-scale logistical nightmare. With less water to work with, canal authorities had no choice but to cut back traffic.
The Panama Canal is falling victim to climate change as shrinking water levels force ships to part load in order to navigate the vital waterway.
The number of daily ship transits dropped from 38 to just 24, a nearly one-third reduction. And just like that, the canal's smooth, clockwork rhythm broke. Cargo ships carrying everything from oil to consumer electronics backed up for miles. At one point, More than 100 vessels were stuck waiting, and global supply chains began to strain under the pressure.
We have vessels waiting outside for almost 3 weeks. Time is money.
The economic impact? Brutal. Billions of dollars in goods were delayed. Costs ballooned and delivery times stretched out. And the ripple effect hit everyone, from factory floors to store shelves. With no clear fix in sight, shipping companies scrambled to adapt. Some rerouted their vessels all the way around Cape Horn, the long, dangerous path the Panama Canal was designed to eliminate. The detour added thousands of miles and extra weeks to their journeys, but for many, it was the only option. And every extra mile meant more fuel, more time, and more money. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a reality check. The canal, responsible for 5% of global maritime trade and nearly half of all U.S. container traffic, was no longer a sure thing. The backup exposed a glaring vulnerability. The entire system hinged on a single lake, fed by rain, in a region growing more unpredictable by the year. For Panama, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The canal brings in about $2.5 billion annually, money that supports the nation's economy. But with transit numbers down, toll revenue began to dry up just as fast as the lake feeding it. In response, Panama pitched a $1.6 billion plan to build a new reservoir on the Indio River. But with a 6-year timeline, it offered no short-term relief. And while global trade tried to regain its footing, one country had already taken notes. What Panama saw as a disaster, this rising power saw as a golden window. The rise of rival routes. For the first time in over a century, serious contenders are threatening the Panama Canal's hold on global shipping. The 2024 drought didn't just disrupt cargo flow, it lit a fire under nations looking to reroute the future of trade. With water levels in Gatun Lake dropping to record lows and transits through the canal slashed by 32%, the world got a stark reminder. Even the most strategic choke points aren't immune to climate stress. And that vulnerability has opened the door for new players to step in. Mexico is leading the charge with its interoceanic corridor, a sprawling 188-mile rail and highway network connecting the Pacific port of Salina Cruz with Coatzacoalcos on the Atlantic. Slated to handle 1.4 million containers a year by 2026, the project is already partially operational and gaining momentum fast. What makes it a serious rival isn't just geography, it's design. Unlike the Panama Canal, which guzzles over 50 million gallons of fresh water for each ship transit, Mexico's dry land route is drought-proof and far less dependent on costly infrastructure. That means fewer delays, fewer weather-related risks, and cheaper logistics for shippers who've grown frustrated with Panama's rising tolls. But the idea of bypassing Panama isn't new. In the late 1800s, the U.S. nearly built a canal through Nicaragua, using Lake Nicaragua as the main waterway. It was deeper, shorter, and potentially safer, but ultimately shelved in favor of Panama's better political positioning. Colombia, too, has floated canal plans over the decades, though none have advanced past blueprints. For the most part, these alternatives remained in the background until now. The canal's 2024 crisis has reignited those long dormant ambitions. Governments, corporations, and investors are suddenly paying close attention to what used to be backup plans. Mexico's corridor is no longer a regional infrastructure upgrade. It's a symbol of a shifting global strategy, and it's drawing international investment at a time when Panama's reputation is taking a hit. The stakes are enormous. Panama earns $2.5 billion a year from its canal, roughly 10% of its GDP. But with global shipping giants exploring more reliable options, that revenue is no longer guaranteed. And just as Mexico positions itself as a practical rival, there are whispers of a far bolder plan in the works, one that could make even Mexico's corridor look modest in comparison. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the future of global trade, go ahead and tap that like button. It helps us bring you more stories that connect the dots behind the headlines. China's Latin American power play. While the world scrambled to deal with the Panama Canal's breakdown, China had already moved its pieces across the board and was quietly winning the game. In the background of the 2024 drought disaster, Beijing didn't just watch, it advanced. Through its sprawling Belt and Road Initiative, China deepened its presence across Latin America, threading investments into ports, highways, and energy grids with strategic precision. It wasn't loud, and it didn't have to be. The groundwork had been laid years earlier. Back in 2017, Panama made headlines by switching diplomatic allegiance from Taiwan to China. But behind the politics was a much bigger play. The Belt and Road had arrived in the Americas. Panama was the first country in the region to sign on. That same year, China-backed Hutchison Ports, already operating the Balboa and Cristobal terminals since the late 90s, quietly expanded its control over canal-adjacent shipping traffic. Today, nearly a quarter of all cargo passing through the canal flows through those terminals. Then came the big-ticket projects. Chinese contractors took the lead on Panama's $1.42 billion fourth bridge over the Panama Canal, linking key districts and raising flags in Washington. Meanwhile, money poured into infrastructure like the Amador Cruise Terminal and metro expansions in Panama City, shiny symbols of development, yes, but also quiet signs of shifting influence. In 2023 alone, China invested more than $1.4 billion into Panama, 4 times its average pre-Belt and Road funding. And while Panama officially withdrew from the Belt and Road Initiative in 2025 under mounting U.S. pressure, by then, the machinery was already in place. Chinese firms remained deeply embedded in critical sectors, not just in Panama but across the region, from Peru's massive Chancay port project to solar and hydroelectric initiatives in El Salvador. This wasn't just about trade deals or job creation. China had found a lane to outmaneuver decades of American influence in Latin America. With U.S. investment slowing, China moved in fast, offering cheaper and faster alternatives. And the numbers tell the story. China is now Latin America's second-largest trading partner and closing in on the top spot. To some in Washington, the writing on the wall couldn't be clearer. Lawmakers, including Senator Ted Cruz, warned that China's grip on key trade infrastructure could one day limit American naval or commercial movement, especially in a crisis. And as the Panama Canal grew more fragile, China seemed ready to flip the script with a move bold enough to shake the foundations of global shipping. The mysterious 125-mile trench. As global trade bottlenecked in Panama and shipping companies scrambled for solutions, another story quietly began gaining traction, one far more disruptive than toll hikes or transit delays. In the shadows of Central America, there were murmurs of something bigger, a potential Chinese-backed waterway that could bypass the Panama Canal entirely. The rumored project? A 125-mile trench slicing through Nicaragua, possibly linking Lake Nicaragua to the Pacific Ocean.
Nicaragua hopes to quickly begin work on a canal linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans.
If true, it wouldn't just rival the canal, it could upend the entire geography of global trade. Unlike Panama's lock-based system that depends on fresh water from Gatun Lake, this route would be a sea-level trench. No locks, no lake levels to worry about, and most importantly, no drought risks shutting it down. But the real kicker? It could handle supertankers far larger than those the Panama Canal is equipped for, even with its latest Neo-Panamax expansion. For shipping giants transporting bulk goods and oil across oceans, that's a game changer. No height or width limits, no delays, and if it came with lower transit fees, it could strip away billions from Panama's revenue almost overnight. Still, the project remains a mystery. There's no official confirmation, no press releases, and certainly no shovels in the ground, at least not that anyone has seen. What does exist are curious satellite images, regional chatter, and intelligence leaks, suggesting that Chinese engineers and planners might be quietly surveying the region. If these rumors hold any weight, it's clear Beijing could be resurrecting a century-old dream once proposed by the United States, but shelved in favor of the Panama route. What makes this more than just speculation is China's recent track record. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, it's already poured billions into Latin America, in ports, bridges, energy, and rail. The idea that it could fund a strategic waterway in a country where it has growing influence isn't far-fetched. In fact, it might be the next logical step. U.S. policymakers aren't ignoring the whispers. A second transoceanic passage under Chinese control wouldn't just be an economic blow. It would complicate naval logistics and raise serious national security questions. For now, it's just smoke. But the longer Panama struggles with climate-related setbacks, the more likely it is that this flame gets lit. The Nicaraguan Canal's lost dream. Before whispers of a new trench began stirring global curiosity, there was another bold effort to rival the Panama Canal, one that began not as a rumor, but as a signed, sealed, $50 billion promise. Back in 2013, Chinese billionaire Wang Jing and his HKND group secured a deal with the Nicaraguan government to construct a 173-mile canal linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. It was set to be one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects in modern history, 3 times the length of Panama's canal, twice as deep, and designed to carry ships so massive that even Panama's Neo-Panamax locks couldn't handle them. At its peak, the project sounded like a miracle in the making for Nicaragua. With a struggling economy and a GDP per capita of just $2,313 in 2024, the government believed this canal could be the key to transformation. President Daniel Ortega touted the project as a national lifeline, promising tens of thousands of jobs and a path to economic revival through global trade. But what was pitched as a golden opportunity quickly spiraled into controversy. Within a year, protests erupted across the country. Indigenous communities and small farmers were told their lands might be seized to make way for the canal. The plan involved relocating over 120,000 people, many of whom had deep generational ties to the land. Violent clashes broke out, and the public backlash only grew louder. The environmental risks proved just as damning. The canal's route would cut through Lake Nicaragua, one of the region's most vital freshwater reserves. Experts warned that dredging the lake could destroy ecosystems, pollute drinking water, and trigger irreversible ecological damage. Then came the financial collapse. In 2015, Wang Jing's fortune was decimated during China's stock market crash. The billions he once pledged evaporated, and so did investor confidence. By May 2024, the Nicaraguan government officially terminated the agreement with HKND. What remains of the project today are half-finished access roads and abandoned construction camps, a silent monument to a vision that never came to life. Now, as rumors swirl about a Chinese-backed trench project elsewhere in Central America, many wonder, is this a revival in disguise? Could Beijing be using lessons from Nicaragua's failed venture to quietly build something more feasible, more discreet, and ultimately more effective? Ecological catastrophe looms. For all the talk about trade routes and global power shifts, the most alarming aspect of the rumored 125-mile trench isn't geopolitical, it's ecological. At the heart of this possible mega-project lies a massive environmental gamble: the potential contamination and collapse of Lake Nicaragua, Central America's largest freshwater reserve. If that lake is ever dredged and opened to the Pacific Ocean, the damage could be swift, widespread, and irreversible. Lake Nicaragua isn't just a big body of water, it's a source of drinking water for millions, a lifeline for local communities, and a sanctuary for biodiversity, including at least 22 endangered species ranging from rare freshwater fish to the elusive jaguar. Connecting it directly to the ocean would disrupt that entire ecosystem. Saltwater intrusion could seep into the lake, turning the freshwater toxic. Local fisheries, already under pressure, could collapse entirely, threatening food supplies and regional livelihoods. That's just the start. Marine species from the ocean could push into the lake through this open trench, overwhelming native wildlife that's never had to compete with them. The result? A slow-motion ecological disaster that spreads far beyond Nicaragua. Wetlands, forests, and other ecosystems connected to the lake would feel the ripple effects, possibly forever. None of this is new territory. the now defunct Nicaraguan canal faced the same environmental concerns. Back then, experts warned that dredging would destroy delicate habitats and require the relocation of over 120,000 people. Protests broke out across the country. Indigenous groups, farmers, and activists raised the alarm, not just about lost homes, but about vanishing forests, poisoned rivers, and the long-term survival of entire communities. And if we're taking notes from China's previous mega projects, the outlook doesn't get any rosier. The Three Gorges Dam, hailed as an engineering marvel, later caused landslides, contaminated water supplies, and displaced more than 1 million people. Rushed development, poor transparency, and a disregard for environmental safeguards are red flags that critics fear could resurface with this trench. So far, there's been no public release of any environmental impact assessments, just whispers and satellite snapshots. That silence is loud, and it raises a fundamental question. If this trench moves forward, will it follow the same destructive path? Or will it be forced to stop, not by politics or money, but by nature and the people fighting to protect it? If this raised your eyebrows, go ahead and share it. More people need to hear this. U.S. wake-up call. When news broke of China's growing presence around the Panama Canal, and rumors of an entirely new canal-like trench began swirling, Washington didn't just take notice, it hit the panic button. For decades, the U.S. has relied on the Panama Canal not just as a trade shortcut, but as a strategic artery that keeps its economy humming and its navy mobile. But in 2024, as the canal struggled with drought-driven delays and Chinese firms quietly gained ground across critical points of the waterway, it became clear America's grip on Latin America was loosening. Roughly 40% of U.S. container traffic passes through this narrow isthmus. On the military side, it serves as a fast lane for moving ships between oceans during times of crisis. But now, a chunk of that traffic, over 21%, moves through terminals operated by Hutchison Ports, a Hong Kong-based firm. China also helped build Panama's $1.42 billion fourth bridge, further embedding itself in the country's logistics network. While none of this means Beijing controls the canal, the increasing footprint raised alarms. If tensions ever escalate, could China disrupt trade or slow American naval movements? U.S. lawmakers aren't taking that risk lightly. Senator Ted Cruz has already called it out as a strategic red flag. Washington's response has been swift, but not always smooth. A wave of U.S. investment, nearly $4 billion a year, is now flowing into Panama's infrastructure, meant to outpace China's Belt and Road projects. But the effort feels reactive, not proactive. In 2024, Donald Trump made headlines with a controversial claim that China was operating the canal,
declaring that the U.S. will take back Panama Canal from China's influence, speaking at ribbon-cutting for a new U.S.-financed dock.
A statement that Panama and Beijing quickly denied. The fallout left Panama irritated and reminded everyone that this isn't just a U.S.-China power game. Local governments are watching, and they don't appreciate being pawns. By 2025, the U.S. pushed Panama to walk away from the Belt and Road Initiative. It worked, technically, but China's footprint didn't vanish overnight. Years of cheaper, faster deals from Beijing had already reshaped local alliances, giving China leverage Washington can't ignore. Now, with alternative trade routes emerging, like Mexico's interoceanic corridor and a possible trench backed by China on the horizon, the U.S. finds itself racing to regain lost ground. The question isn't just about who controls the canal. It's about whether America can maintain its influence in a region where the rules of the game are clearly changing. Panama's high-stakes balancing act. For a country smaller than South Carolina, Panama holds an outsized role on the world stage, and right now, the pressure on its shoulders couldn't be heavier. The Panama Canal, which moves 5% of global maritime trade and funnels in nearly 10% of Panama's GDP, isn't just a piece of infrastructure, it's the country's beating heart. But with the US and China treating the canal like a chessboard square in their broader rivalry, Panama's leadership faces a delicate and potentially explosive balancing act. Since taking office in 2024, President José Raúl Mulino has had to walk a tightrope. On one side, he's pushed back hard against outside narratives, like President Donald Trump's claim that China was operating the canal. That comment, made in the heat of the 2024 U.S. campaign season, sparked backlash not just from Panama, but from Beijing as well. Mulino made it clear, Panama runs the canal, no one else. And yet, the influence creeping in from both global powers is impossible to ignore. China's presence is deeply embedded, from Hutchison ports operating the Balboa and Cristobal terminals that move over 21% of canal cargo, to massive construction efforts like the Fourth Bridge. Chinese capital has poured billions of dollars into Panama in recent years, funding cruise terminals and once ambitious rail projects, some of which have since been shelved. To push back, Panama withdrew from China's Belt and Road Initiative in early 2025, a move largely seen as a response to U.S. pressure. At the same time, it launched an audit of Hutchison ports, signaling that while foreign investment is welcome, control over the canal remains non-negotiable. Yet Panama's biggest threat might not be political. The 2024 drought revealed just how vulnerable the canal has become. With ship traffic down by 32%, the government fast-tracked a $1.6 billion reservoir project on the Indio River, designed to stabilize freshwater levels and prevent future disruptions. The only problem? It won't be completed for another 6 years. Meanwhile, Mexico's interoceanic corridor is rising as a competitor, and China's rumored 125-mile trench project adds even more uncertainty. If Panama loses its central role in global trade, the ripple effect could cripple its economy. Panama isn't choosing sides, it's fighting to keep its own. But in a world of shifting alliances and mounting climate risks, even neutrality comes with a cost. The battle for global trade. The future of global trade might not be shaped in boardrooms or by stock markets, but by water levels, shipping routes, and a trench that doesn't even exist yet. The Panama Canal's 2024 crisis, triggered by severe drought, has revealed a hard truth. The world's most vital shipping shortcut is no longer as reliable as it once was. That vulnerability has reignited a race between superpowers to control the arteries of global commerce, with China quietly positioning itself to change the game. For over a century, the Panama Canal has been the crown jewel of maritime trade. But as climate shifts bring more extreme dry seasons, transit through the canal dropped by 32% in 2024. Tolls have increased, traffic has slowed, and frustration has grown among global shippers. That instability has forced a hard pivot. Countries and corporations alike are now looking at alternatives, and one in particular has drawn global attention: the rumored Chinese-backed trench across Central America. If constructed, possibly linking Lake Nicaragua to the Pacific, this 125-mile canal could do what Panama increasingly cannot, like handling supertankers year-round, no matter the weather. It would cut costs, bypass tolls, and potentially elevate the Chinese yuan as a preferred currency for global trade, directly challenging the US dollar's dominance and America's maritime influence. Meanwhile, Mexico is charging ahead with its interoceanic corridor, a 188-mile rail and port network that aims to move over 1 million containers annually by 2026. It may not match Panama's capacity, but it's gaining traction fast. Caught in the middle, Panama is doing everything it can to hold the line. The canal brings in billions annually, and losing even a fraction of that business could have long-lasting consequences. On the global chessboard, the U.S. is trying to reclaim influence with $3.8 billion in yearly investments. Still, its efforts have struggled to keep pace with China's faster, more aggressive strategies. Whether or not the trench is ever built, the mere possibility of it is forcing a rethinking of trade routes that have gone unchanged for generations. Will Panama's canal remain the heart of global shipping, or will a new route tilt the balance of power eastward? Subscribe now to follow the unfolding battle for the future of global trade. Because whether Panama holds its ground or a new route shifts the balance, this story is far from over. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.